it's like an out of body experience when you are doing what God has called you to do. Because when we look at it, it's not in the flesh that we're doing these things.
You know, when something as tragic as that happens, you either cry for Jesus or you cry for your mother.
I can't even explain to you the rage, the hurt, the helplessness. It was me on the ground.
I'm calling on all mothers to take a stand and let's stop this violence.
I raised him. God blessed me with him at 7 pounds. And when he died, he was 230 pounds, 6'2". A lot of blood, sweat, and tears and prayers went into getting him there.
I tell people all the time that tears don't mean weakness. It means human. It means caring. To wipe your face and fight anyway, you are the sheroes of our generation. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Depends on what time you're watching this Zoom. We've got some very distinguished and classy ladies I'm going to introduce you to in just a moment. We have been thinking about my latest book, When Women Pray, and we talked about 10 different women in the Bible, and Esther fascinates me for this occasion because her people were on the verge of genocide. She steps from obscurity into notoriety in one swoop of fate and finds herself with the whole future of the nation in her hand. In that same heroic effort that we see in Esther, we also see in these three women. I am blessed to have some very, very recognizable women with us tonight. Honored to have my dear friend Sybrina Fulton joining us. Good to have you, Sybrina.
Good to be on, Bishop.
And also, I'm going to go ahead and call you my dear friend because we've been on a couple of shows together. Gwen Carr, I'm glad to have you as well.
Yes, and thank you again for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. It's so inspiring.
I enjoyed it, and I'm going to enjoy this. I appreciate you, and I'm glad to get your thoughts and hear from you and just learn from you. And my new friend, but she's got my book, so I guess I'm an old friend, Queen Esther Brown. Welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's ironic that I'm talking about Esther and your name is Esther, so that's, you gotta feel right at home.
Yes.
You know, you all have played a very unique role. I had the privilege several years ago of meeting the mother of the civil rights movement. She was called Rosa Parks, and she left an indelible impression on my life. And yet in many ways, you all have become the mother of the Black Lives Matter movement. Probably a position that you didn't want, but you found yourselves in nonetheless. I'm going to start with Sybrina because for this generation, a lot of the conversation started with Trayvon Martin. And what you went through, how you went through it, and how faith played a role in you surviving to get where you are.
One of the things that I can certainly say is you can never be prepared for losing a child. There is nothing that you can possibly do in life that will prepare you for that particular type of loss, that particular type of pain, or it just does not prepare you properly for what you are about to experience for the rest of your life. And so it feels like it's a hole in your heart, and you know you can't do it alone. And at the end of the day, people go home. You know, your family go home, your friends, the church people, everybody go home. And you have to have a way to bring yourself back from your loss. And what do? You can't do anything but lean on God. You can't, there is nothing else that will bring you back from losing a child besides leaning on God. There is absolutely nothing. And so I tell people all the time about my favorite Bible verse is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. And so I lean on that Bible verse. I even tell my son, like, you have to have something to meditate on. You have to have something to believe in. And even though I don't know what happened with Trayvon, I don't understand what happened with Trayvon. I'm not going to say I don't know what happened. I don't understand what happened with Trayvon. I have to trust in God. I have to trust that God was there.
Grief is hard to deal with under any circumstances, but to be snatched into the clutches of grief in such a brutalic way, it's got to be devastating. It's got to be hard to deal with. You know, when you look at this tragedy that we're in, and my condolences again. I've interviewed two of you before, but let me express my condolences to all of you again and over again and again and again, because I know that the grief doesn't go away. The time does pass, the flowers fade, the cards stop coming, but the grief stays. How you manage it, I can't even imagine. Eric Garner laying on the ground, screaming, "I can't breathe," indelibly etched a place in the hearts of all of America and people all around the world. I thought that we would never hear that phrase again until George Floyd was saying the exact same words again. And I wonder, Gwen, when you heard those words, what ran through your mind?
It just was like an echo from the grave. It was like my son still crying out that this world, our community, we need a lot of help. We need a lot of healing. And we have to get out here and we have to do something about it. Like there are some of us who are out here doing different things to try to make this world a better place for people of color to live. But at the end of self, we have to depend on God. We have to pray to him. We got to tell him, Lord, you know, I've done all I can. Can you just take my hand and take us further from here? So this is what I did. When my son was murdered, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn or what people to trust in. So I had to trust in God. I had to ask him to guide my footsteps, and hopefully I would get involved with the right type of people. And it worked, because I have gotten in touch with very positive people, very religious people, people who have taken me to the next step, who have taught me because they were taught by God. And this is what you have to put your faith in. You can't just go out there with some fly-by-nights, and because they're out there to gain on your pain.
Right.
And you can't let that happen. They're still going to do it, but don't let them do it at your expense. So I just says, without me leaning on that everlasting arm of God, I don't know where I would be now. I could have lost my mind. I could have been in a hospital bed on strong medications like some mothers are. Mm-hmm. And when I meet these mothers, I ask them to please pray about it. You know, you can't tell a person how to mourn, how long to mourn, or when to stop mourning, but you just ask them to pray about it and ask God to give you strength to carry on and not let this be the end of your life.
Esther, you, like the Esther in the Bible, stepped into the forefront after the loss of your son, ended up doing a radio show to kind of bring light and attention to it. What was the impetus that made you say, I can't lay around here on the couch with my hair undone, eating buckets of ice cream, but I've got to get up and do something about it? How does that help to be doing something about it?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much again, Bishop. It does. It makes a difference to be engaged, to be involved. I lost my son on October 26, 2006. And it was so ironic that when I lost the day that I had my last hour with my son had been away at school, and he had recently had a baby. And he wanted to come back home. He was at FAMU up in Tallahassee. And me as mom, I was encouraging him, stay in school, stay in school. And he was like, Mom, I'm going to just come back home and I'll just work a little bit and buy my girlfriend a ring because she has my child now. Now, Bishop, I had just recently lost my job, September 5th, 2005. I was laid off of my job. My son decided he was going to come back home and stay and work and buy his girlfriend a ring that November of 2005. He decided he was going to go back to school. He kept his apartment because he told me, oh, I'm going to go back eventually. And Bishop, when I lost my job, it was very devastating to me. It was one of the most devastating losses I had after being on the job for 17 years. And I was working with county government and I felt very secure. I did all of the things they told me to do. I went and got my education. I applied for jobs. I tried to do everything. And I found myself unemployed on September 5th, 2005. My granddaughter was born September 12th, 2005. My son left school that November 2005. And when my son left school, he came home to stay with me. It was he and I, the only two in the house. And I got a chance to bond with my son like I never had before because he had been away at school like for 2.5 years. So I began to watch him as he tried to find employment, tried to find jobs. It was very difficult, very challenging for him. And I began to bond. We'll get up in the morning, both of us sit, drink our cup of coffee. I'll make eggs or whatever. And my son finally found a job and he had went to work. He came home from work. He had been at work for 1 week, came home one day from work. He says, Mom, kind of like the job. I talked to the owner today. He was telling me what I need to do, this and this and this. So I said to my son, I said, I want you to do me a favor. I took out a yellow legal pad, which I still have to this day, and an ink pen. And I said, listen, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to write out a 5-year plan for me. I want to see your life in 5 years. Do a SWOT analysis. I want to know what your strengths are. Your strengths are you're young and you're healthy. I want to know what your weaknesses are. Your weakness, you don't have a college degree. You don't have no work experience. And you are Black and you live in America. That's going to be a challenge for you. Your opportunities are, if you put your heart and soul and your mind to what you're doing and you put your faith in God, you can accomplish anything you desire. And your threats, there are many. So I told him to write me out a 5-year plan. I said, I want to see you, show me you on this paper 5 years from now. Include your daughter, who's very important to you. And then better yet, after you do that, give me a 1-year plan. He took it. He said, okay. He was sitting there eating. I had made him a little snack. He put it down. Just came from work, worked 16 hours, a double shift. Went to work 10 o'clock the night before, got off 3 o'clock the next day. I noticed I had to go to the bank, the credit union real quick. So I said, listen, it's 5:45. I got to go to the credit union. So I'm going to go, but I want you to go in there and get your rest. He said, yeah, Mom, I'll get my rest. I noticed that his tire was going flat on his car. So I called my other son. I said, listen, take his car, go get it filled up with air for me. So he said, he's not here. I said, what do you mean he's not here? The man just worked a double shift. He said he left. He left with his cousin. His cousin came and picked him up. My son left the house. And to make a long story short, he was in the car with my nephew. My nephew had been in a confrontation with a guy over a girl. The young man was angry with my nephew, shot into the car, and a bullet hit my son. My son never saw his killer. My son didn't know his killer. The killer never saw my son. They didn't even know each other. But one of the things that was so ironic, when I got my son's death certificate, and I looked at, it was about 3 months later, I hadn't even noticed it. And I looked at the cause of death. The time of death was instant. The cause of death was homicide. He was shot 1 bullet to the back. It pierced his lung and he suffocated on his own blood. The time of death that he died was 6:44 p.m. When I'm telling my son to do a 5-year plan, I want to see you in 5 years. I want to see your life 1 year from now. My son only had 59 minutes to live. I believe that's why he didn't put anything on that pad. 59 minutes. With that being said, he had did a CDL license to carry hazardous materials. The medical examiner's office is the office that gives you the license to carry, to check you off that you have no pre-existing conditions where you are healthy enough to drive gasoline and hazardous material. My son passed that test exactly 30 days before his death. The medical examiner's office said he was healthy. There's no cause for concern. I did my job. I raised him. God blessed me with him at 7 pounds. And when he died, he was 230 pounds, 6'2". A lot of blood, sweat, and tears and prayers went into getting him there. So with that being said, I couldn't accept the fact that he was dead. You know, people say you need to accept it, and I couldn't accept it. How does a healthy 6'2", 200-pound young man die within an hour of talking to his mom? So I began to find out what happened. The medical examiner had an opinion of what happened. The law enforcement had an opinion of what happened. Everybody had a reason about what happened, but it didn't sit with me. I used to go to the medical examiner's office every day because you guys got to tell me something more than just so. And the medical examiner, his demeanor was so like, this happens every day. Black boys are dying every day. This is not a big deal. Don't you know it's the #1 cause of death for sons your son age? Young men your son's age, it's the #1 cause of death in America. And I'm sitting there like, I didn't know. No one told me. I raised 2 black men in this country, and you tell me the most threatening thing is homicide? Someone taking his life, and I couldn't accept it. So when I learned that fact, I felt like going on top of the tallest building in America and get a microphone and let every mother of color, black and brown boys, did you know what's the most threatening thing to your son? When I gave birth to that young man, they had me in a room, all the mothers. They gave me a coupon to teach him how to swim. They gave me WIC coupons to keep him healthy and strong. They told me to teach him how to ride a bike and how to take care of him and get his immunizations. But they didn't prepare me for what was the most likely event to take him out was death at the hands of another person.
As a man standing here looking at the three of you, there's this invisible fraternity, and it's not just because you're women, but there seems like some sort of invisible fraternity, chemistry, understanding that you have, having passed through the same portal of losing your children. Do you feel that way? Do you feel interconnected, more interconnected with mothers who have been through it than you do mothers who have not?
Yes, definitely. Meeting mothers who has gone through it is a strength. It's like a medicine. It gives me a better understanding of what I'm dealing with, because we can finish each other's sentences. When we talk, it's like we know each other. I know these 2 ladies better than I know myself, because it's like childbirth. The minute that one woman starts talking about her pregnancy and being in labor, and another woman has been in labor too, she gonna start talking about her labor pains and how long she was in labor. It's right. Like that familiar. We all know about labor, but now we've been chosen for a different type of birth. This is a different process, but it's the same way. We cried when we brought them into this world, and we all can relate. And we did a second cry that I don't think we was really supposed to do with the order of God, the order of nature. You cry once, but we had to cry twice.
Let me pull Gwen into it.
Yes, Bishop, it is definite a sisterhood. Like these two ladies who's on now, which there are so many more of us, but the two of us, the three of us that's on now, we have been through some things together. Myself, Sybrina, myself, and Queen. We travel. I know once me and Queen, we were traveling, and I mean, we was traveling on faith. Talking about faith. We didn't have a room. We didn't have a rental car. We was on our way. We was from Jersey to Miami, and we didn't have a room set up. We had some kind of confusion. We didn't. And what happened? We all got there. We got together. First, they told us they didn't have a rental car for us. Queen said, "Come on, we going back in there. They're going to give us a car."
Mm-hmm.
And we went inside and we talked to the rental car person. And so we are mothers who have lost our children, and we're trying to get to an event, and we have to have a car.
Wow.
She says, okay. She gave us the car. And then we had a room. We didn't have a room to stay. We went to the room. We did the same thing to a hotel. Got a nice room, a suite, where all three of myself, Queen, and Wanda Johnson. It was just amazing that we just stepped out on faith, not looking for the staircase, and we prevailed.
When Mordecai told Queen Esther, "Who knows that you were not called for such a time as this?" I wanted to ask each of you, is this a calling, or is this therapy? Do you feel like you've been selected to carry this cross and to solve this problem? I mean, Sybrina, you were the first one up, and I remember meeting you in New Orleans right after the death of your son, and you were still trying to pull everything together in your own head. Do you feel like you're called now to be a part of this revolution?
Absolutely. I feel like I've been handpicked. And I'm not ashamed to say this, but I struggled with God, and I told God, no, you have the wrong person, because I didn't want it to be me. I didn't want mothers who have lost a child through senseless gun violence or through the hands of a police or a black on black crime. I didn't want them to reach out to me. I didn't want to be the person that had to handle such a heavy burden. Mm-hmm. You know, and so I struggled with God. I told God, no, just give me Trayvon back. I promise you I'll go to church. I promise you I'll pay my tithes. I promise you, I just wanted to be this super saint. Just let me do a do-over. Let's just start over and do this over. Because I really think that was the wrong person that he selected. I feel like it was just it wasn't me. It just, why me? Why God? Why now? Why I had so many unanswered questions. And so that's why I said that the Proverbs verse about trusting in God, because I put all of that aside. I put everything, that all the rationale, all the logic, and just thinking about what happened, I put all of that aside when I put my faith in God and put my trust in God. He took the burden away from my chest, from my heart, because it can manifest into an illness, and it did for me. But I just feel like God was there. That situation had nothing to do with Sybrina Fulton. That situation had to do with Trayvon Martin and God, and that God was there. He was present. He knew it was about to take place. I just wasn't prepared for it. And then a lot of times, when we think about our children, we think about they're ours. That's mine. That's my son. No, it was God's son first. Mm-hmm. He just loaned me Trayvon for 17 years. Had I known it was only going to be for 17 years, I probably would have tried to put a lot more into those 17 years. But we never know. We know when they're going to be born, but we never know when they're going to die. Yeah. And so I just wish I had more time with him. I just thought about after his death and thinking about all the things and saying to myself, every child needs their mother. Who doesn't need their mother and father? You need your parents. Like, what is he doing? And I questioned a lot of things. And then I finally came to the realization that it was a reason. It was something that he saw in me that I didn't see in myself. And even people saw it in me, and they were telling me how strong I was, and I didn't feel strong in myself. Mm-hmm. I felt weak. And one of the things when I talked to you, Bishop, you probably don't even remember it, but you told me how strong I was. And I said, I don't always feel strong. And you said you need to talk about it more. And I have. I started talking about my weak times. And I have talked about, because people think I'm so strong. They think I don't have bad days. And I do have bad days. I want people to know I'm human. I still have bad days. And on my bad days, I'm not afraid to cry. I'm not afraid to say this is a bad day. I'm not afraid to say, leave me alone. I'm not afraid to stay in my bed with my pajamas on. I'm not afraid of any of those things. I know that when I go through that bad day, that a good day is coming. Mm-hmm. And so I just have to tough it out on those bad days. But I've learned to just put my trust in God. There's no man that can control your feelings and your hurt, your sadness, your pain, your grief when you're going through the loss of a child. No human being could do that. That's only God. Only God can do that.
When you think about that, and one of the amazing things is that all of you are talking about your faith in God and how it brought you through and how it anchored you and brought you through the dark days and all that. But a lot of people who went through something like what you went through absolutely lose faith in God. They walk away from God. They say, if God was there, this wouldn't have happened to me. But you all don't seem to have that attitude. And I wanted to ask Gwen, what sustained your faith going through this, losing your son? That's one question. And the other question is, did you ever blame yourself?
Bishop, to answer your first question, the way I sustained myself, because I didn't really know how, we all blame God when it first happened. And we say, Lord, why did you let this? Why did you let this happen to my child? You know how this was going to hurt me. You know how I was going to be broken into so many pieces. Why? And I would pray. And then I just realized that being that I was still praying to God, I'm still believing in him. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't be praying to him. So I said, so he's going to have to help me through this. So I says, well, Lord, just give me a direction. Give me something to give me a sign that it's going to be all right. Because right now it doesn't feel like it's going to be all right. I think I just want to stay in this bed and I just want to go to sleep and just wake up when this terrible nightmare is over. Mm-hmm. But Bishop, it was never over. Yeah. Because at least with a nightmare, you wake up. Yeah. This we'll never wake up from. This is our life to the day we die. This is the mother's life. And far as blaming myself, oh my goodness, for months, I blamed myself for not being there to protect my child. If I was there, I says, I could have saved his life. Or if I couldn't save his life, they would have took both of us because I would not have stood there and let them murder my child, choke him to death, and I stand back and just scream. No, I would have went and I would have intervened. So I says, why wasn't I there? Why didn't I get a flat tire that day and have to call him to come and help me fix my flat tire? And then he would have been with me and not over there on Bay Street where he was murdered. And when I prayed to God about this, it was like the Holy Spirit talking to me saying, no, Gwen, you was not supposed to be there that day. Because if you was there that day, possibly they would have taken both of your lives. Mm-hmm. And then who would have been here to lift up your son's name? Who would have been here to carry the torch and to tell the people and tell the world who your son really was? Because the media, they always put a spin on things. They tell the stories that will sell papers. We as mothers, we tell the real story. And the story can't come from anybody better than the mother of that child. A mother who has been with him from the day that he laid under her heartbeat for 9 months. And then she's seen him grow from an infant to a little child, to an adolescent, and to a grown man. So who else can tell his story better than you? Absolutely. So that's why I decided to turn my mourning into a movement. Yes. And my sorrow into a strategy. So now that I can tell the world who my son was and let you know that some of these stories that you hear is not true. This is coming from his mother, and God has given me that strength.
Amen.
And I don't know why I can speak now. I don't know why I don't be afraid of crowds, but God. So I had no other alternative but to believe in him and to believe that he would put me out there and he wouldn't leave me out there.
Somewhere beneath all of the rhetoric and the things we say and the things we do, are you ever angry? And how do you deal with that anger?
I'm angry, yes. The way I deal with my anger is I try to find a way to relax. I read a lot. I'm an avid reader. I pray a lot. I was raised by a mother. My mother was a missionary, and she, missionary Thompson. And she taught me how to pray. She taught me how to get angry, but not sin. I was angry that my son was murdered, but I had to channel that anger in the right place. Like you said at the beginning, our faith is shaken. I was angry at the world. I was angry at myself for going to the credit union to try to beat a check to keep from paying $29. That's what I was rushing to the credit union for, because I had done wrote a check and I was trying to beat the check to the bank. So I felt like for $29, you left him by himself for him to go with his cousin, and then he lost his life. With my anger, I have to come to terms. I have to sit down. I read and I write. And I had to write down all the circumstances of the event. I had to begin to understand that even if you were there with him, there was nothing you can do about this. This was not in your hands. I always felt and believed that I could fix things and I can change things. But once I begin to surrender and I begin to say yes to God, I begin to say, Lord, just show me the way, just show me the path, and I will follow. The only way to stop my anger was to surrender. I had to surrender and say, God, I'm yours. And I felt like I had been prepared for this because of how the events took place, and me being off from work and having an opportunity to spend time with my son, precious time. And I used to say that losing my job was like the worst event that had happened to me prior to my son's death. But actually losing my job was one of the best things that happened to me because it tempered me down. It taught me not to get angry. And now I look at situations where people don't quite understand. I remember going to church after my son's death. I had stopped going to church. I wasn't really going like I was supposed to be because I was raised in church every Sunday, Saturday night, youth night, a Bible study. We had church 7 days, Pentecostal church, 7 days a week. We was going to be in church. And I kind of got older, got grown, began to get settled down, raising my children as a single mom. And church wasn't really on my agenda, but my kids was there, but I wasn't in church like I was supposed to. But let me tell you, I got back in church after I lost my job. I got back in church because see, it was like a setup for me. He was preparing me and giving me everything that I needed to be on this journey that I'm on. I could think about things that I used to struggle with, rejection and all that when I was younger. But somehow that year before my child's death, it was a very profound transformation taking place in my life where I didn't even begin to recognize myself. And I began to go to church, and I joined Bishop Curry's church right after I lost my job. And I got into orientation. My orientation last meeting was that Sunday after Sunday school before Sunday service. That was my last orientation. So we was going to march the next Sunday. And my son was killed that Thursday before I got to March. But we had a practice with Mother McRae. We were supposed to have practice that Saturday. Now, my son was murdered that Thursday. So I'm walking around here, hadn't slept in 2 days. So Thursday morning, I couldn't wait. I get dressed and I go to the church. And I'm sitting there in church. My kids, I'm like, where are you going? You're following me. And I'm like, don't follow me. I was on my way to church. I couldn't wait. So I go in and sit down, and I'm in new orientation. Mother McRae, I'm talking. She says, wait a minute, hold up. Somebody whispered in the ear. She said, somebody in this room, son was just murdered 2 days ago. And they're in. And then she started walking and talking and walked over to me. And she prayed for me. And she couldn't believe it. She told me, she says, what you did by coming in here today, God is going to use you in this situation. This situation is not going to take you down. It's going to build you, baby. It's going to build you. And I went to church and I found my strength there. I found forgiveness. I forgave myself. I forgave myself all the things that I felt that I didn't do right. And I began to release it. And I began to forgive the people around me. I forgave the person that took my son's life. I had to do that. I had to forgive him. And in order for me to move forward, now not all of us are not there yet, but I'm just telling you, Bishop, where I'm at. Mm-hmm. Because I began to look at the bigger picture and the broader picture, because my son was killed. It's community violence. It's violence. I call it the Cain and Abel syndrome that we're living. Mm-hmm. See, my son died on the asphalt. He died on the ground, where the blood crieth out from the ground. That's where my son died. He didn't die in no hospital bed with white sheets like we used to see on television back in the day, watching them old movies. My son died on the asphalt. He died on the ground, and it left a blood stain there. So I just saw God all in this from the very beginning. I saw God. From the minute my son they gave me that death notice, I knew this was not mine. But I was angry. I was angry at a lot of people. Angry. I used to stop every rescue vehicle I used to see. I used to stop them and ask them, why didn't they try to resuscitate my son? My son died instant. He was taken straight to the morgue. He didn't even go to the hospital because his wound was so severe. It was one bullet to his back, and it severed his lung. So it was no chance. He choked on his own blood, is what the autopsy report says. But I was angry at all rescue workers because I felt they could have done more. I was angry at law enforcement because they should have known that guy had a gun. I was angry at my nephew from coming to my house and picking him up. I was angry at my other son for not letting him go out. And I said that to my oldest son, and it almost devastated him. If God didn't get a hold of me and get me in the room with that boy to apologize to him, it would have destroyed him.
Hearing you talk about your sons, I see it from your son's perspective, and I see my mother, and I see so many things. When I saw George Floyd on the pavement, like like all of your sons ended up on the pavement, and that 8 minutes and I think 47 seconds.
46 seconds, yes.
46 seconds with that knee up against his neck. And I heard him cry for his mother. And his mother was dead. I can't even explain to you the rage, the hurt, the helplessness. It was me on the ground. I understood why he would holler for his mother. It's the most chaotic moment in your life, and you want somebody you absolutely trust to be there, even though you know she can't be there. Or maybe he saw her coming to get him. I don't know what it was. What did you as mothers think when you heard that boy crying for his mom?
When something as tragic as that happens, you either cry for Jesus or you cry for your mother. And I actually believe that he knew that he was dying. He knew that he was in a situation and he was losing his life. And who do you reach for? You reach for your mother. You call your mother. You scream out for your mother. And that's what he did. And he sent a message to all mothers. So we got the piece of being the mothers, and you all got the piece of being him on the ground. So we all took away our own experience from what we saw, but we all saw a sign of disrespect.
Yes.
We saw how America feels and treats a lot of African Americans. I'm not going to say everybody, but most African Americans, that's how they treat you. And we saw that. But not only did we see it as being African Americans, but other folks saw it as well. And that's why when you saw all the protesting happening, it wasn't just us. It wasn't just African Americans complaining about how we're being treated and the injustice that we're experiencing. You saw all nationalities out there. You saw men, women, children. You saw all races, all religions. You saw, because they felt that's a human being. Regardless of what type of father he was, regardless of if he was committing a crime or whatever the situation, they put themselves in that position and they said, listen, that's a human being that's being treated like an animal. And I think that's why everybody was so outraged. But I think the cry out for his mom reached our ears. It tore a hole in our heart. And it reminded us about our children who are deceased. But it's also reminded mothers who have not lost a child that this could happen to my son.
That's right.
And then for other African-American men, they put themselves in that position and said, what if that was me laying on the ground? What if that was my son laying on the ground? What if that was my brother laying on the ground, my father laying? They put themselves in that position of George.
When I found out that his mother wasn't alive, it just seemed to me that he was crying out for all of us mothers to stand up. And, you know, we got to do something about this. They're still killing us.
Yes.
Yeah.
You mothers are strong. And he knows that. He knew that because of the mother he had. So now I'm calling on all mothers to take a stand and let's stop this violence. Let's get rid of these police officers who are murdering our children. So, you know, come on out. And that's what we did. We came out.
Esther said, she said, if I perish, I'm going to see the king. You all weren't raised up or trained to be who you became. Walking up on those stages, dealing with Congress, dealing with all kinds of people, you've been thrust on every network. You've been exposed to everything since then. Were there moments that were intimidating or frightening to you that you felt like, if I perish, I'm going anyway? Or did it come natural?
Now when I speak, Bishop, I've never spoken in front of a crowd before my child was murdered. I never did any type of public speaking. And people, I was afraid to be in front of crowds. And I didn't know what to say. But as the Lord said, just open your mouth and I'll speak for you.
Whenever I would speak, whenever I would go to some place that I felt like I wasn't comfortable, I would just pray. And God would give me a certain peace. And people would ask me, were you nervous? And I'd be like, no, I wasn't, because I would pray in my mind. I would ask God to help me say the right things and help me think the right thoughts. And I would just pray. And even when I was nervous, nobody could even tell that I was nervous. But I definitely made sure that I was covered when I went in there. And I just said whatever. I can tell you that when I met President Obama, Michelle Obama, my heart was about to beat out of my chest at the White House. And the other person that made me just like overwhelmed was Maya Angelou. We all met, including the attorneys and my family. We met her and we were speechless. Like, we were just looking like we could not believe that was her, and she was talking to us. And those times have been just like really, really overwhelming. And my heart was like really beating out of my chest. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to say. I don't know if I should just be quiet or should I talk. I didn't know. But I would just pray, and I would just ask God to cover me, show me, tell me what to say. Help me. These are your people. Help me to say the right things to your people. These are your people.
I was watching a movie about mothers who had lost their sons, and all of them kept something. A ring, a watch, a blanket, a coat. I'm wondering, is there some memento that you kept of your son that is priceless to you? That
I got so many things.
really?
I got skates. I got a hoodie. I got a pillow. I got a teddy bear. I got pictures. I got like so many different things. And so I, you know, a lot of times when somebody lose a child, they don't like to put the pictures up. I started off early putting the pictures up because I don't want to ever forget. I know I'm never going to forget, but I just put the pictures up to remind me to keep going, to remind me not to give up, because he was all watching me. He's over my shoulder right now, and he's always watching. He's always listening. And I have to remember that. But I take with him the memories. And if I close my eyes, I could just think of him hugging me and kissing me, because he was a mama's boy. He was very affectionate. He was very close to me and his dad and the family. He was his dad's best friend, but he was my baby, you know? And so I just, it's a different type of loss. It's hard to explain because we carried them in the belly, in our stomach for 9 months. And so that connection will forever be there. And I always say, not even the death of my son will separate me from the love of my son. Nothing can happen that will separate me from loving him. I still feel him around me. I still talk to him. I still believe that he's doing well, and he's probably real tall and still smiling.
Yeah, you got that picture in your head. When you think about your son, Gwen, was there something that you kept?
Yes, Bishop, well, you can't see it now, but to the right of me, I have so many pictures from different marches. I have ribbons that people sign. I have a chest that was given to me the day of his funeral that says in memory of Eric Garner. And I put all his personal, his toothbrush, his medication, everything in this trunk, and even a suit of his clothing, a pair of shorts and a t-shirt that he wore that I didn't even wash, that's still part of him. And it's just, when I look at it, although it's bittersweet, but this is a part of me. Mm-hmm. This is a part of me that will never die. It's like here in my heart forever. It's a hole, but he's there. And I'm going to love him. I'm going to always cherish him, and I'm going to always lift up his name. And I don't want to forget him, because people say, oh, time heals all wounds. I don't want this wound to be healed, because once it's healed, that means you forgot about him. But I don't ever want to forget about my son. And I know I never will.
I get it. Queen, is there something you kept?
Yeah, just like my two sisters just said, I kept a lot of things as well. But the thing, you know, I kept like his fishing rod and the little worms that go in the end up, I don't know what they call them, but he loved to fish. But what I have that really touches my heart is the personal belongings they brought me from the medical examiner's office after they did a death notice. They brought a brown paper bag for me. And at the bottom of the brown paper bag was his wallet. And on top of the wallet was his belt. It was curled like in a circle, and it sat right on top of, it was his wallet, then it was his cell phone facing upward, and then it was the belt that was on top of the cell phone. And they gave me the death announcement and whatever, and then they gave me this bag. And I looked into the bag, and it started to vibrate. He had his phone on vibrate. And in the phone, it says, my baby's mama. That's what he had as the name, and she was calling. And the phone was trembling, and I said to the officer, I says, how do you tell a 22-year-old young woman in love with her first child that the father is dead? I said, how do you deliver that message? And he just said, I think you should let someone else do it. So I didn't answer the call. But I eventually, it took me years, I sat down and went through his wallet, and I took every little picture, every little receipt. I just peeled it apart. It gave me joy because it made me feel like he was there with me.
I think it was Kentucky. The police were facing off with the protesters, and it was about to get ugly. And all of these white mothers came up and joined arms and stood in between the police and the protesters. And being a child of the 60s, I remember when the protests of that day, there weren't a lot of white people involved in it. To see those white women link arms and stand in between the police and the protesters was indescribable, because for me, it represented being heard, because for years we've been crying out and everybody said, you're whining, it's race baiting, and to be heard, it legitimized the pain that we knew that they were just waking up to. What would you say to those white mothers that are watching us right now? What would you say to them?
I would tell them, I would commend them for standing up. A lot of people see what's going on, but they are protesting in silence. They say something to their friends or their family, which is not going to make a big difference. And so I commend them for standing up and standing out, because they really didn't have to do it, but they saw the injustice that is happening all over the United States, and they see these tragedies continue to happen, and they wanted to do their part. If everybody did their part, we could make positive change. But you have a lot of people that want to sit back and complain about what's going on, but then they don't want to do anything or do what it takes to make the necessary change. And so I just commend them. My hat's off, and I salute them for, just standing up for us.
It made America pay attention. And this is what we need. More Americans like those women to pay attention to what's going on with us, and that we are not just complaining. We're not just whining about what's going on. They're actually killing us. We are unarmed. We're not doing anything wrong, and we are still dying. So thank you, ladies. I hope there are more of you out there like those ladies who stood up in the front. Mm-hmm. And my hat's off to you.
We need you. We need them to partner with us to do what we're doing. And I think it was symbolic for the mothers to join arms and stand for us and our children. And I think in essence, they was really standing for all of the children. I'm doing things that I never thought I would do before. I'm going places and talking to people that I never thought I would have. It's like an out-of-body experience when you are doing what God has called you to do. Because when we look at it, it's not in the flesh that we're doing these things. I have spoken, and like my dear sister Sybrina, like Miss Gwen said, I have been writing down things and write out my speeches and write them out. And Sybrina be like, put that paper away. You ain't gonna use that paper when you get up there. And she's absolutely right. Because what you do is you begin to feel the crowd and you begin to deliver. It's like, it's an awareness and an awakening that when you step on that stage, you just become them, and they feed you and you feed them, and that momentum, and you begin to give them what they need, and you begin to receive because you're receiving too. So his wallet, his belt, his cell phone, I have all those memories. I have all those things to this day, and everything, and the driver license. I have his license, his school ID from Florida, from FAMU. I have those things. Those are the most personal items. But I did keep a suit and a pair of shoes. I couldn't keep the clothing. They gave me his clothing, which they had cut off him. You know, I didn't want it. I just told my son I couldn't keep it, to get rid of it. That's the bad part. I don't want to remember that.
Yeah.
Not like that.
Thank you very much. You ladies have been fantastic. It's such an amazing thing to just look at all of you and see how strong you are and how courageous you are. And even when you're not strong and you think you're not strong, you're still strong. I tell people all the time that tears don't mean weakness. It means human. It means caring. To wipe your face and fight anyway. You are the sheroes of our generation. We feel related to you, and we love you and we respect you, and thank you for sharing such a personal part of your life with me tonight. I don't take that for granted. That's sacred. That's sacred, and I respect it highly. And I respect you. I grieve with you, and I pray for you. And you're our mamas, and we love you.
Thank you.
We love you too.
We love you. We love you.
I just want to say thank you for having us, and congratulations on your book. I know it's going to do well because it's about women.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sybrina Fulton. I lost my son, Trayvon Martin, through senseless gun violence. And I want to encourage you to get out and vote. It's important. People died. They fought. They were beaten for your right to vote. You have a right to vote. It's important for you to get out and vote. And your vote is your voice.
My name is Gwen Carr. I'm the mother of Eric Garner. I lost Eric in 2014 to the NYPD police violence. And I am urging you to get out and vote. It is so important. Don't let anyone tell you that your vote don't count. People died and they fought and they bled to get you the right. So now please just get up out of bed and go vote. It is your strongest weapon. Thank you.
And my name is Queen Brown, and I am the mother of a murdered son. My son, Everton Elijah Brown, was murdered October 26, 2006. It is very important that you get out and you cast your ballot. Get out and vote. We need you to vote. Let your voice be heard.